on the 20th of September 2022, an article appeared, at least the one that I read appeared on that date, concerning a guy in Texas with 5 red heifers. Well, of course, this would get some of the fundamental prophets going, and it would also get some in the Church of God Seventh-day observers going as well. These 5 heifers are sent over to Israel to see if one of them is completely pure, because this would be the heifer that they have to slaughter and turn into ashes to be able to get the priesthood, or those that want this physical temple of some kind in Jerusalem started with animal sacrifices. They have to get this pure red heifer to be able to sacrifice and put the ashes into some kind of ceremony, and then they can build this kind of temple in Jerusalem and go back into performing the rituals of animal sacrificing. Now, this idea, well, let me give you the overall teaching of some fundamental Protestants. There will be at the end time a 7-year period. They take it from Daniel chapter 9, with the 70th week yet to take place, and they say it will be at the end time. So there'll be this 7-year period at the end time. There will be a rising of the beast power, right? The book of Revelation, and that is correct. There'll be a rising of the beast power. Actually, it will be the 7th resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire in Europe. And this will rise up, and it will make some kind of a covenant with the state of Israel, with the leaders in their parliament, will make a deal with this European power, and the deal will be kind of, well, the beast power of Europe, well, we will protect you. And some people have even gone as far as to say that the Jews will give up their armament. They'll give up their super duper science planes. They'll give up their bombs, and they'll give up all of their scientific armory to protect themselves, and they'll let this beast power of Europe be the one to protect them. Now, that is by itself a teaching that is so bizarre, it is so loony, it is so daft, that it must come from planet Pluto. To think that the Jews, the state of Israel, would ever give up its army and its space-age technology of defense and let some European power from the outside protect it somehow. I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. But in any case, that's what some say. So there'll be this 7-year deal between the European beast power and the state of Israel. But in the middle of this 7 weeks, it will come, they will break the covenant. Now the Jews will have already started this little temple with animal sacrifices, but in the middle of this 7 years, it will be broken, and the European power will break this covenant with the Jews, with the state of Israel, the government of Israel. And then there'll be this great tribulation of the last 3.5 years. They throw in here the rapture idea, that the true people of God will all of a sudden, any second, Jesus will come and rapture them away, so they won't have to face this last 3.5 years of tribulation. They'll be raptured to heaven. So they throw that in as well. Now and then eventually at the end of the other 3.5 years, Jesus will return. The battle of Armageddon will be fought, and Jesus will be king over the earth. There are tiny little bits of truth here, my friends, because when there ever is a large falseness, theological teaching, there'll always be a little bit of truth here and there. Now, where do they get this idea from? Well, they got it from a fellow called Scofield, way back at the beginning of the 20th century, in his translation of the Bible and in his footnotes. He proposed or said this scenario that would take place because he interpreted the 9th chapter of Daniel that way. That interpretation by Scofield and those following him is completely incorrect. I've gone into it thoroughly on this YouTube and in my studies on my blog and website. I've gone into it thoroughly, that this idea is completely incorrect, that Scofield came up with. And then some fundamental followers of Protestantism have followed it ever since and have been proclaiming it ever since. It's completely daft, friends. It's completely wrong. The truth of Daniel chapter 9 is also fully expounded to you on my blog and on my website especially. And what some of the old Protestant theologians like Albert Barnes, Adam Clarke, and others, they had it correct. They had the correct interpretation of Daniel chapter 9. They had it correct before Scofield came along and messed it all up. And Scofield's idea and the fundamental prophets that have followed him are from planet Pluto. I'm telling you quite plainly and bluntly, they are wrong, they are incorrect. Now, let me put it another way. If the scenario of these fundamental prophets have it correct for the last years of this age, then how can you explain in the Psalms where it is written that the wise will understand, that indeed good understanding is given to those that do the commandments of God? It's in the Psalms. My friends, it cannot be. The Protestants, fundamental Protestants, can't have it correct because they don't keep the commandments of God. And you want a specific one? They will not teach you to keep the fourth commandment. And so they are breaking that fourth commandment. They're trampling all over it. They do not keep it themselves, or if they do, it's in private, and they will not teach it to you. So just that one commandment puts them out of the circle, out of the people that really will know what end-time prophecy says. The fundamental prophets then can't understand end-time Bible prophecy because they're not willing to keep the commandments of God. Now, this end-time prophecy does not need a physical temple in Jerusalem to be built. And they don't tell you that Orthodox Jews teach that only the Messiah can build the next temple. But you've got this little cliquey group, a little sect of Judaism that is wanting to build this temple and commit animal sacrifices. I don't know how they think that the animal rights people will react to people killing animals just out of a ritualistic approach. I don't know how they figured that the animal rights people would just stand by and let them do it. But in any case, it's this tiny little sect and a tiny portion of Protestantism that goes along with it. So now, just think, let's suppose this tiny little sect of Jews and Protestants build some kind of a tent tabernacle, and they do start to kill a few animals and sacrifice them in a ritualistic service. Do you think that the beast power of Europe, the resurrected Holy Roman Empire, is going to make a covenant with that sect? Do you think they're going to make a covenant with a little sect of Jews and a little sect of Protestants that are doing this thing? It's stupid to think so. They're not going to be bothered what some little sect is doing. The teaching that the Protestants, fundamental Protestants, put forth is that they make a covenant with the Israeli government, not some little religious sect over here in the corner doing some physical something or other. They're not bothered about them. And the teaching is that they'll make a covenant with the Jewish parliament. Do you think that the Jewish parliament is going to go along with something that Europe will protect them, and some people so stupidly proclaim that they'll give up their armaments and let this Europe beast power protect them? It's absolutely ironically silly and stupid to think so, that the Jewish parliament would ever do such a thing. The beast power makes this covenant with the Israeli government, not some little sect off here doing some strange little thing. It will not take place because this little sect will have to get the okay from the Jewish parliament. They'll have to get the okay to say, yes, we are with you. We will back you up. And you think they're going to do that, a secular government? And don't you realize that the Jewish leaders are secular? Only one tiny little Orthodox sect is amongst them, but the rest of them are all secular. They couldn't care less about animal sacrifices. They're secular. You think that this little group of animal sacrifice teachers and temple tent builders are going to get the Parliament of Israel, State of Israel, to back them up? I guess not. The whole thing is false. The whole thing is wrong. The whole thing is not biblical. And it will not take place in the way that these fundamental prophets want it to take place or say it will take place. And again, you want the details on some of these things, it's on my website, it's on my blog, to give you the answers to what this end time prophecy is. Daniel chapter 11, verse 40 to 45 says nothing there about a temple and animal sacrifices. The king of the north will be the beast power of Europe. The king of the south will be Egypt and her allies. There will be a friction between them. Egypt and her allies will push at the king of the north. The king of the north will come down and conquer them. And then it goes on to say, march into the Holy Land, the glorious land. And then you have Daniel chapter 12. In there is nothing about a temple and animal sacrifices. Later on in that chapter, where you have in there the word sacrifice, you'll notice in the King James Bible, it's in italics. It is not in the Hebrew. And the other prophecy in Daniel concerning the end time, also the word sacrifice is in italics. It's not in the Hebrew. Everything that is going to happen at the end time will be as Jesus said in Matthew 24, that indeed anything about a temple concerns the stones that Jesus said would all be thrown down. And all of that never happened in 70 AD. The Wailing Wall today is part of the temple of Jesus' time. Those stones at the end time, my friends, when the beast power does come into Palestine and conquer the Jews and destroy Jerusalem, those stones will be thrown down. And that prophecy in Matthew 24 will be fulfilled. That not one stone will be left upon another. It wasn't fulfilled in 70 AD. It will be fulfilled at the end time. A temple and animal sacrificing does not have to take place to allow Jesus to return. And as I've said, say it again, the Orthodox Jews teach that only the Messiah can build the next temple. It's time. If the fundamental prophets are correct, then how can they be? Because they do not keep the fourth commandment. And I've said to you, in the Psalms, only those that are willing to keep the commandments of God can have understanding. They cannot possibly have the correct understanding. Why are the churches of God, Seventh-day observers, going along with Protestant idea from Schofield? How can they go along with such a thing when they cannot? Those fundamental prophets cannot understand Bible. They cannot understand prophecy because they will not keep the commandments of God. All of this truth is expounded on my website. To go to my website, you have to go to Wayback Machine, then click on the year 2015 or 2017, click on the month, the little dot that's on the month, click on one of those dots, click on what comes up, and you're on my website. And then you can go to prophets under my website, and all kinds of studies on prophecy are there for you. I've also put them on my blog here and there. But if you go to my website, you'll find them all in one place under the title Prophets. Indeed, learn the truth about the end time. And indeed, that may be many years away yet, because the king of the south has not yet arisen, and the king of the south must arise for end time prophecy to be fulfilled. So it could well be a number of years, it could well be a decade or two before the prophecy in Daniel 11:40 to 45 comes into play and happens. But you keep your eyes on it, and then you will not be surprised by the events that take place leading up to and during the last 3.5 years, 42 months of this age, and the return of Jesus Christ.